Welcome, everyone, back to The Search Bar, the podcast dedicated to helping law firms grow smarter. I'm your host, Eric Ritter. With over 12 years in the legal industry and a holistic approach to business growth through Digital Neighbor, I've helped law firms boost their visibility, refine their messaging, and drive leads through strategic partnerships. On this show, we break down the stories, strategies, and systems that help law firms attract more clients and close more cases. If you're ready to put what you learn here into action, be sure to book a free strategy session through your Motion for Marketing Success system where you can learn more and figure out, I already ran out of steam at the beginning. I knew I'm going to be the first one to do that. I think my script is messed up here. Hold on, let me reread this. If you're ready to put what you learn into action, be sure to book a free strategy session through our Motion for Marketing Success system by visiting. That's why I lost it. Okay. This is a newer kind of intro. That's why I don't have it memorized yet, Thembi. So we'll take it again from the top. So we'll just clap here. All right. Perfect. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to The Search Bar, the podcast dedicated to helping law firms grow smarter. I'm your host, Eric Ritter. With over 12 years of experience in the legal industry and a holistic approach to business growth through Digital Neighbor, I've helped law firms boost their visibility, refine their messaging, and drive quality leads through strategic partnerships. On this show, we break down the stories, strategies, and systems that help law firms attract more clients and close more cases. If you're ready to put what you learn here into action, be sure to book a free strategy session with me for my Motion for Marketing Success system by visiting digitalneighbor.com/motion or check out the link in the show notes. Now, I'm really excited for today's episode because it's all about building to be seen, not gimmicks. No trend chasing. I'm joined by the awesome Thembi Bheka, an internationally recognized visibility strategist and the founder of Digital Marketing On Demand. She helps entrepreneurs unlock authentic visibility that works with the algorithm, not against it, and positions them as thought leaders, not just content creators. She's here to share the essential principles from her authentic visibility framework, including how to build a brand that search engines trust and real people remember. And because this episode is all about standing out with confidence, for today's episode, I'm pouring a glass of Chardonnay. Bright, balanced, and hard to ignore. Just like a visibility strategy done right. And that's today's wine recommendation for this episode. So Thembi, welcome to The Search Bar. Really happy to have you here. And just for those that don't know, Thembi and I sat together at a panel at PodFest. That's how we met. So I'm really excited to have her on today. Thembi, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful introduction that was. And thank you so much for the beautiful introduction and also for what you do in this podcast, because you're definitely changing businesses with the strategies you share and the guests you bring. And it's amazing what you've been doing. Thank you, Eric. Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that. And I know today, we're going to talk a little bit more about entrepreneurs, right? And I work a lot with law firms and focus on law firms. And the fun thing is there's a lot of correlation there, right? Because law firms are started by an individual a lot of times, and it grows from there. And you kind of have to have that entrepreneurial mindset when you start a law firm. That's why I'm really excited for today's conversation, because you've helped so many entrepreneurs grow their digital presence through strategic storytelling. So let's start with the basics. So Thembi, what do you say to entrepreneurs who feel like they have to be everywhere to be visible?
That's a very interesting question, because I think one of the things and one of the misconceptions we have, not just as entrepreneurs, but as individuals, is that the more I am everywhere, the more I am seen, the more I'm recognized, and the more I get noticed. But it's rarely true. People don't remember you about being everywhere. Visibility is not about being everywhere. People don't remember scatterbrains. They remember you when you are in a specific place, like you want to dominate a certain area. I'll give an example, and this is not political, but if you look at Elon Musk, he's on Twitter. Like, I don't even think he's got a Facebook account. Maybe he does. I've never seen it on Facebook. I've never seen him on Instagram. I've just seen him on Twitter. We know him as Elon Musk on Twitter. We can think of any other entrepreneur. Think of Oprah. She is on Instagram mainly. She is everywhere a little bit, but mainly Instagram and YouTube. So you want to start somewhere. You want to dominate one platform. Be clear on that platform. Don't scatter your genius, trying to please every algorithm. You're not going to do that. Authority isn't built by being busy and by being scattered. It's built by being bold. So be bold, be on one platform. Once you have mastered, once you've created that, once you're well known, then you can move on to the next platform. You don't have to be everywhere to be remembered.
That's such a great example. And another person that comes to mind is Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Gary V.
Yes.
He is the master and he's kind of everywhere, but he really focuses like, hey, I really want to own YouTube. And that's where he started, right? And once he figured out YouTube's like, hey, this TikTok thing, that seems really interesting. And he's all over TikTok. And then on all his other channels, what's his call to action? Follow me on TikTok, right? He wants to focus on that one channel. So such an important point, right? Of not, even Napoleon knew you don't spread your troops too thinly or kind of separate them. You keep your forces together, right? In order to win. And same thing here. Well, let's talk a little bit about storytelling, right? Because you talk about story being the foundation for visibility, which I thought was really interesting, but how can an entrepreneur tap into that, especially if they're maybe not that natural storyteller?
Yeah, this is the thing, like no matter whether you're a natural storyteller or you're not, we all have a story to tell. We all have history. Nobody doesn't have history. The challenge is that we've been trained to hide some parts of us. We've been trained to be secretive. But those are the parts that connect the most, I always say your most ordinary moment is often your most powerful hook. Like for me, in my case, I moved to Canada with $5 in my pocket. It sounds very ordinary, but when I start sharing it, for others, it might be burnout, like I am burnout or reinvention or a single defining choice. But the question is, how is that story, how is my audience going to relate to that story? Yeah. It's not about should I tell a story. It's am I willing to be real enough to be trusted? Because people connect, stories connect. Even when you think like in the long ages, like before, our parents, we used to sit around the fireplace. We would sit around the fireplace and listen to a story, listen to grandma telling a story. And that's what connected us. That's what created that community within us. And now with AI, people are so disconnected. I remember Brené Brown saying, we are the most hyper connected, but the least connected. In a sense that we have so many connections, Instagram, Twitter, everything. We're so connected to technology, but we're not real connected in reality. So the best way to have connection with people is by story. Share your story. Nobody can replicate your story. AI can replicate everything, but it can never tell a story. And only you, Eric, only you can tell your story the way it really comes out. So I think as founders, as entrepreneurs, one of the things for us to be visible is share your story, because people always remember a story.
I think that's beautifully said, right? And it really also builds kind of that trust and the authenticity that people want, right? They want to understand what's behind that person, what's behind the screen, especially now what I've seen like with the younger generations, right? That they really want to, they don't just buy the brand to buy the brand. They want to understand what's the story behind it. What's that founder story? Why did they make these sunglasses or these socks or whatever it is because they're, then if there's a because behind that kind of that story, you have a connection kind of with that brand, right? Versus just, I'm going to buy it because it's on sale. So you're actually, you're creating that connection there, because it's humans that are purchasing. One human from another is much more powerful than I'm buying from this unknown big conglomerate or whatever it might be. So that's so true.
And so when you look, actually, to add on to that, when you look, even the big brands like the Coca-Colas and they now connect with a story. Before, it used to be like, we're this big company, this executive corporate. But now they have to put in a story of an individual. Because as you said, people connect with one-on-one. They don't connect with a big CEO behind the desk. They connect with an individual, with a person. So you definitely have to put that personality, and that comes through a story.
That's so true. And I wonder, and this is a little off topic here, and I'm just kind of going down a rabbit hole a little bit, is, here in the States, like the insurance companies, right? They've really pivoted into, now we have a spokesperson, the Gecko, Progressive has Flow, Allstate has this Mayhem guy, right? So it's like an individual that you connect with versus just a big brand there, and I think that's just in line there too, because they're telling a story in the commercial versus just buy our insurance.
Yes.
That's so true. Well, let's talk about kind of misunderstandings here, right? Let's talk a little bit like the other side there. So, because we're talking about visibility online, right? People remember story, like you said, and so what would you say if you had to give people advice? What's one thing people really misunderstand about that visibility factor and being visible online?
I think it's one of the things really which it's not just about being visible, it's about being consistent. Mm-hmm. Because it's so easy to just be visible and show up and disappear. But when you are that consistency, I think, is what people get wrong online. Like, people are not very consistent. They'll come and make a noise. But what cuts through as well in terms of the consistency is also the emotional frequency. Like, when you lead with lived experiences, you share content that hits different. It's no longer just about copy, it's about connection. When you are showing up and sharing, and still going back to the same thing of story, sharing your story, sharing real life things that are happening, it converts because you're connecting with your audience. I'll give you an example, Eric, which has happened actually in my personal life, in my business. Our business, we used to have, obviously, content, social media manager, and all that stuff. We still do. But what happened is the content person would create content, post it on YouTube or wherever we're posting, and share that content. It never really used to convert. And we were using a lot of artificial intelligence. Eventually, I said, let me just start connecting with my audience by writing stories every week. So instead of just writing general content to say a blog about, we have to have SEO and all that stuff, I started writing a story-related connection. One of the examples, my brother graduated for his first degree at 53. I shared that story, and I connected it with basically our business, how it works in business and everything. And I can tell you, when I started sharing those lived experiences, the content hit differently. People started connecting, and we started having higher conversions. So I think most people, when they go online, they just want to copy and paste instead of really going through, like, what is an experience I could share with people? What is something I live on a daily basis I could share with people, which will connect with them and create that connection? It's really about connection. Connection converts.
Yeah. I love that. And it's so true, right? Is that, again, that's creating authenticity instead of that kind of fake persona online, right? It's like whenever I see someone like post, hey, I'm flying in a private jet, or here's my Lamborghini, I don't even care, right? Because it's so unrelatable and so untrue. I'm like, okay, you rented a Lamborghini for a day, congrats, great job,
Especially you guys from Florida.
Yes, it's very
and
true.
Your beach, Florida and the beach.
Yes. It's a whole different world, that's for sure. Well, let's talk about a little bit more what you did. Obviously, like you said, I'm in Florida right now. You've been all over the world. You were Canada, and you also founded Digital Marketing on Demand, right? Which I think is such a great initiative to bridge African talent and global business, because you want to impact visibility and create visibility and impact in one place. So, is that okay to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I founded Digital Marketing on Demand, I think I shared the story with you before, but I'm going to share this with the audience. It really was an accidental finding. It really was. It wasn't intentional. I had no intention whatsoever to own an agency. I had a history of coming from an abusive relationship, and I kind of wanted to give back to the community by helping women from abusive relationships as well. Eventually, I trained these women. They couldn't find jobs, and it really was hard for me to just see them struggling with it was really mainly a cultural difference thing. That we had to bridge the culture between North America, which is where most of the employers are, and in Africa. And so they really struggled with that. And eventually we did manage to do that. And I ended up starting an agency. And just going back to that, it really wasn't, as I said, it really wasn't a visibility thing. But because I shared so much about these women and I shared so much about the passion I had, people saw beyond a business. And for us, they saw beyond a business, and what they saw was a movement. So we ended up starting this movement. And yes, we do have women trained in Africa. They work with their virtual assistants. They help. Most of our clients are based in North America. Really, that's where most of our big market is. But it wasn't just about visibility. It ended up being about a movement, because the more people you can help, the more you can change more people in the world, really.
That's awesome. So talking about visibility, really, how do you think really that visibility move changed your brand's trajectory, right? Do you think that really was kind of what helped it take off, is kind of making sure you have that visibility there?
I don't think I led with visibility. Even though visibility is important, I don't think I led with visibility. I led with trust. Mm-hmm. And I led with trust and connection and partnership. So I created, I shared my story. And when you share your story, people connect with you. And when they connect with you, they start trusting you. And when people trust, they share the word. They spread the word. When we started our agency, and I think I've shared this with you before, we've never done Facebook advertising. Why? Because it has been word of mouth. Because we shared our story, people related and connected to that story. They started telling their friends, and trust was just transferred. And that's what accelerated us to be visible. That's what made things go fast, because there was trust. It was built. Our business was built based on trust, and we really, we started from scratch. Nobody knew who I was when I started. I had no team. I had no list. I had nothing. Just building those relationships through trust, through stories, and then that ends up and spreads to visibility. I don't think when you're building a brand or a business, you go out and say, I'm going to be visible. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Just have a vision obviously bigger than yourself, and start building those relationships, because the currency, trust is currency, is the new currency really in media here. And so once you build that trust, it starts spreading and people share that message. And before you know it, you are visible by being on podcasts. People are starting to invite you on podcasts. Right. People are starting to invite you on their stages. People are starting to invite you to speak on their platforms, and you just spread like wildfire like that.
Yeah. I love that. So do you have any recommendations maybe for entrepreneurs, how they could use partnerships or even media? You mentioned a lot of good things there, but I just want to dig a little bit deeper, for partnerships or media to really kind of accelerate kind of their platform, accelerate their visibility.
Yes, I love, that's my specialty. I really enjoy this whole partnership thing. I think people underestimate the power of relationships. I think they underestimate the power of being on a platform. I had a client not long ago who signed up, and he had signed up because he heard about me on a podcast which I recorded many, many years ago. And I think for many lawyers listening here, most of your audience is lawyers. Just go on podcast. It doesn't have to be a podcast that's about legal stuff. It can be a podcast about women in abusive relationships, or a podcast about entrepreneurs wanting to grow their business. And you just share your angle of the legal aspect on what to do. Do you know that, Eric, when I started my business, I didn't know I used to, I didn't have, you know, the things you have on your website, like the terms and conditions, whatever those things at the bottom, the legal stuff. I did not have an income disclaimer on any of them. I had just gone on some website and created it on my own. It wasn't until a client tried to sue me, basically based on that. And then I consulted a lawyer, and then the lawyer said, oh, you have to have an income disclaimer and earnings disclaimer. That's what they call it. Earnings disclaimer and all that stuff. And he walked me through that. But I think a lot of people don't realize, if you can just go onto an entrepreneurship podcast, this is just an example, and just share that. And it's so easy to get on podcasts. They think, oh, I have to be this big guru to go on a podcast. Just find somebody who's got a podcast and say, I do know the problem your audience has, or they might not even be aware of it right now, but they will be aware of it when they get sued. So I am here to help your audience, and I can share the story. I think it's really underestimated the power of that. And once you go on a podcast, that's when you start building those relationships. You build on those partnerships. We were on a summit together, on a panel together. We have a relationship now. Yeah, we have a relationship now because of that. So you build relationships by talking to people, not through the internet, Googling their name. No, you build relationships by talking to people, and the best way is starting in podcast.
That's such a great point. Just get out there and find some podcasts to be on, because there's so many, and they're looking for content, they're looking for guests, right? Yes. And it doesn't even need to be directly related to what you do. You can tell stories, to your point, to connect with people on all types of podcasts out there, all kinds of media platforms. I want to talk about visibility strategy that lasts, right? I know that's right in your wheelhouse. Is something that that you are an expert in, Thembi, because things are changing, right? I think the panel we were on, we were talking about AI, right? AI, artificial intelligence, is changing how people are searching, how people are being found online. And so what can entrepreneur create? How can they create content that's both human friendly, right? That's creating that human connection, but also maybe connecting with the AI, and let's call it maybe AI smart, and kind of fulfills both of those needs for content.
Yeah. So with that, you have to really move on from just creating content for the sake of producing content, and go into the human part where you are answering questions. If you look at AI, the way AI is structured, it's really the AI engines. They're based on conversation, on a conversational algorithms. So what do I mean by that? So for example, if you go to Quora or Reddit, those Quora and Reddit, you'll be asking questions. How can I grow my business? This is just an example. And somebody will answer them. AI loves those answers. They don't just love a blog where you write how to grow your business and you just list. No, they prefer where there is like a human element to it, where it's like a conversation. I always say to people, you have to speak two languages now. You have to speak with heart and you have to speak with algorithms. So you have to combine those two, because that's the content that wins right now. The one that answers real questions in a human voice. So if you are thinking of like, how can I be visible online in this age of AI? Start answering, even going to platforms like Reddit, going to platforms like Quora, going to platforms, even writing on your blog. Make sure it's more like a Q&A kind of conversation, more than just a written long blog form informative. It now has to be a Q&A conversation, and optimize that for the search engines. That's how AI search engines are.
I love that, right? So not just having, one-way unilateral, here's the way it is, but instead kind of, hey, here's questions I get asked if I'm an attorney, right? Here's questions people ask me after an accident. Here's questions people ask me after they're arrested, and here's how I respond to them, right? I think that's a great a great recommendation there, is not just to say, hey, I know all of this, here you go, but instead reforming it into kind of a question and answer, or frequently asked questions makes a lot of sense. And kind of looking, what are people asking? Like you mentioned Quora,
Exactly.
you mentioned Reddit. You can use that for research. What are real people asking, and what do they care about? Using that kind of as your research engine out there, I think is great. But I want to dive a little bit deeper, Thembi. If you could give people one thing, something that they could do, they listen, watch this podcast, what could they do this week to improve how they show up online? What would that one thing be?
Before AI, I'll answer this in two parts. Before AI, I'll say just Google yourself and find out what it says out there about you. But now with artificial intelligence, I say just go into one of the search engines, whether it's ChatGPT, Perplexity Cloud, and search yourself. Find out what's coming up there. Because that digital reputation report card, now update that. Let me tell you what I did. I went on Perplexity and I found out what it was saying about me. I said, who is Thembi Bheka? And it told me things I haven't even done in years. So I had to go back and update my speaker bio, update all these things to make sure that it reflected my current story. So just go into one of the search engines, Google yourself, find out what those search engines are saying about you. And I'm talking about AI search engines. And then start tweaking the information it says. Because I can guarantee you, if you haven't done AI search engine optimization, it's going to tell you stuff that's outdated. Stuff you don't even know about. You'll be like, what? I'm a teacher? I thought I quit that 20 years ago. So just go search and then see. Also, one other thing, I know you said one, but look at where the source is coming from. Like check where is the source of the information coming from. Perplexity will show you it's either coming from this website, from YouTube, from that. Work on those places, on the sources, and correct those sources first. That way you can start ranking high.
No, and I think those are both fantastic tips, right? And it's a whole new digital discipline, right? Instead of SEO, search engine optimization, kind of the AI optimization. So I've seen two different phrases, right? GEO, generative engine optimization, or LLMO, large language model optimization. I think we'll figure out what the word is. But what I thought was interesting, what you did there, Thembi, is you said Google yourself on other search engines, right? Google itself has become such a synonym just for searching. So do you think anytime in the future, maybe our kids or our kids' kids or their kids aren't going to know Google anymore? And then it's going to be, hey, you need to ChatGPT that on Perplexity, or you need to perplex that on Gemini, right? Do you think there's a chance that Google is going to go away and we're not going to use that word anymore?
Maybe the word might go away, but I think Google is doing a lot of smart things to prepare itself for AI as well. They have their own search engines. They are very affiliated to Bing. Most AI engines are very affiliated to Bing. Sorry, right. And I think there will be a way to find maybe not the word Google will be there, but I think there will be something Google does so that they are not eliminated. I think they're smart enough to see where the curve is going.
Yeah. I think it's going to be similar to the fragmentation we see in media, right? Yes. I'm old. When I was a kid, we had 3 TV stations, right? So if you had to buy a TV ad, super easy, right? In comparison, 3. Now we have hundreds of TV channels. And even now, like we use, Google Analytics to report for our clients. And we see a big increase in ChatGPT traffic. ChatGPT is smart. When it sends traffic to your website, it tags it, puts it in the UTM, the URL says the source is ChatGPT, so that you know where the traffic's coming from. And we're seeing that for law firm clients, that people are searching for the best personal injury in Tampa, a best personal injury attorney in Tampa, in Miami, in Atlanta, wherever that is, coming to the website and contacting them, right? So if I can just add on one other thing, right? You mentioned search for yourself on the AI, figure out the sources that they're using. And I would say also know your metrics, know your data, see where people are coming from, because they're already coming from ChatGPT, from Perplexity, even Bing, right? And just understand what does the current landscape look like and what direction are they moving? Because we're seeing attorneys, they're getting leads, they're getting cases, they're getting retainers from ChatGPT because, it's we call it GEO, generative engine optimization.
Yes.
Like I said, other people might call it something else. We'll still see because we're kind of at the beginnings of it, but that's important to understand how you come up as an individual. I'm going to have to do this afterwards, Thembi. I'm going to ask Perplexity, who is Eric Ritter, and I'm already a little worried about what it's going to show. So we'll see. So I'll have to report back to everyone what came up and figure out what those sources are. So great tips. Yeah. Thank you for those. And I think very actionable. Speaking of actionable, let's close with the actionable checklist from Thembi. It's a quick checklist. So if you haven't been paying attention to now, you've been missing out on great content, but now's the time to pay attention. So it's a checklist every entrepreneur can use. It's 5 steps to entrepreneurial visibility. So I'll read them off, get us started here, and then Thembi's going to give us a little bit of color commentary on each of the 5 points. So number 1 is define your core message, right? Know what you want to be known for, right?
Yeah, that's your anchor. Like without a message, it just feels scattered. So have one message, and maybe we'll start with one platform, specialize on that, and move on to the other. Avoid being scattered.
Yeah. So I just want to underline that because I don't think I personally had heard that before. Focus on one platform first, because usually, right, I'm from the SEO world and we're always like, be everywhere, own all the different platforms to show up everywhere. So I think maybe you can still like set up the profile just to kind of put your flag in the ground to make sure no one takes that username, but just focus on one platform and own it. And I think that's a great recommendation.
Yeah, and even if you have the bandwidth for 2, just maybe 2, but no max than 2, no more than 2, because Eric, what you want to do is be on this platform. Let's say YouTube. Get people to know you on YouTube. You can have Instagram, you can have all other platforms. And then from YouTube, once you feel like, okay, now people know me, you can say, want to know more information about me? Follow me on Twitter or TikTok or whichever platform you're doing. But be known for something, there is a saying which we used to, when we were growing up, my mom used to say, be a jack of all trades or a master of none. Something like that. I think that's what it said, So, but a master of none.
I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Yeah. So if you try to be everything to everyone, you're nothing to anyone, right? Or if you try to focus on too many different things, you're going to be a master of none of them. Kind of that specialization, I think, is really important. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Like you said, that's the anchor, right? What's that core? Yeah. So we're going to move on to number 2, which kind of that next step after you have that anchor, I like how you put that, is tell your origin story, right? Because we've established that here in this conversation. You connect people to people, not products.
Exactly. It makes you relatable. People remember stories. They don't remember stats. They don't remember. Eric, I don't care if you won $1 million or something like that. If you tell me that story, I don't even know if I remember anyone who won a lottery ticket, but I do remember a story that came after that, whether they lost all the money or they changed somebody's life. It's always about the story that comes either before or after that, and so that's what makes you relatable. And I think we really have to talk about the story and share our stories more often. And this comes hard because some of the people, like as we're saying, the audience, our lawyers, most of them, they have to draw the line between telling a story that's not going to get them sued by their clients. There's also that thin line between vulnerability and relatability. But there is a story which you can tell that doesn't make you too vulnerable, but also keeps you being relatable to your clients.
Yeah. And just as an example is, when I'm talking to potential clients, potential attorneys, one of the questions I ask, or not potential attorneys, potential clients that are attorneys, there we go. I always ask them, why are you a criminal defense attorney, or why did you choose to do this, right? And some of them are like, well, I needed money or I needed this or that, right? But I think the best ones are like, that have kind of that origin story of, one of them, and so this is one of a really good example, an outlier, is someone who was born in Jamaica, grew up in Jamaica, saw how corrupt the whole system is and justice and everything. So when they moved to the States, they were just really interested in politics and kind of the justice system, found their way into becoming a lawyer, passing the bar, became a criminal defense attorney. I'm like, holy cow, that's such a great origin story, right? Kind of, and it's really captivating of why you did this. And if I'm choosing an attorney to work with, I'm going to choose you because you care. There's a reason that you're doing this, right? So yes, you have to be careful not to get sued, not promise anything, but still, there are most attorneys, most law firms, there's a reason why you're doing what you're doing. And, sharing that I think is really important and can help you grow your business that way. So let's move on to number 3 here, which is once just to recap, once you've got your core message, origin story we talked about, is getting mentioned, right? You talked about a great, I'm not going to call it a hack, but a great trick or a tip is to get on podcasts, right? Seek those interviews, features, or even partnerships that can build your credibility as an entrepreneur.
But it's so easy to borrow trust than to try to build it on your own. As I'm on your podcast right now, people already trust you. They already know who Eric Ritter is. They already trust you and they love you. So when they are listening to me, naturally they lean towards liking me and starting to trust me because they are hearing me from somebody they know, like, and trust. Instead of me just coming to your audience, hey, I'm Thembi Bheka, I'm going to be talking to you about this. They're like, who is this girl? Where did she come from? But yet, once you borrow me that trust, which you've already done and I'm grateful for, it's so much easier and it's faster than trying to build it alone. So you definitely need to partner with people in that regard. And I mentioned podcasts as an example. There's so many ways to do it, Eric.
Yeah.
Speaking on stages, partnering in terms of promoting my product to your audience, me promoting your product to my audience. Those are other ways to partner. There's so many ways to partner with other people. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And find those out there, right? Kind of could even be referral partners, right?
Exactly.
Out there that can kind of help grow your business. For example, we both do marketing, right? But we don't do the same kind of marketing. So I could, and it's just an example, I do websites, you do SEO or vice versa. And I could build the websites and then send clients to you to do SEO, vice versa. Same thing in the legal space, right? There's other attorneys out there that you can work with, or even personal injury space. You can work with different doctors or chiropractors, kind of that can send you business. So finding those partnerships, I think, can be important, right? Because let's say you're the official attorney. I'm just making this up, right? You're an official attorney of this hospital. Then that hospital has you on the website, gives you the credibility. Maybe you can put some content, blog posts on their website talking about what to do in certain cases or with certain issues. And then you're getting credibility from that larger institution that then kind of helps build your credibility and visibility even. And for the links, we'll put those in the show notes as well in case you missed those, how to connect with Thembi, and to get hands-on implementation for a growth strategy for your law firm. Don't miss out. Book your free strategy session with myself to get started with my Motion for Marketing Success system at digitalneighbor.com/motion. The link will also be in the show notes. And if this episode helped you shift how you think about visibility, share it with a few entrepreneurs or other law firms out there, and even leave us a review. That's how we reach more leaders building for the long game. And again, today's wine, just to wrap up with that, what's a Chardonnay, crisp, memorable, and confidence boosting, just like your visibility strategy should be. Thembi, thank you so much for joining today. Absolutely. Until next time, raise your voice, raise your glass, and let's build something unforgettable. Cheers, everyone.